Hello, everyone, and either welcome or welcome back to the Gender Libertarian Podcast. If you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, and on my Patreon page where you do get early access to episodes. I will put the link down in the show notes. So we have made it through another week of absolutely crazy impeachment news. And this episode is pretty much going to be dominated by impeachment news because that's what pretty much dominated the whole news cycle this week, because we have now officially entered phase 2 of, I don't know how many phases we're going to have of the impeachment proceedings, but this past week is the beginning of live, public, televised, and it was televised on every station you could possibly think of. Carried the live testimony from, first off, Bill Taylor. He testified on Wednesday. And his testimony was pretty much what you would have expected if you had read, say, the opening statement from his closed-door testimony or heard anything that leaked out from his closed-door testimony. There wasn't really anything too new, except for one thing that I think is going to become a very huge thing, and that is in Bill Taylor's opening statement to his public questioning. He mentioned that since the time he gave his closed-door testimony, one of his aides had alerted him to the fact that the aide had overheard a phone call between Gordon Sondland, the ambassador to the EU, and President Trump. And he entered that into the record basically for completeness, to basically just to let everybody know, hey, my aide told me this, and so I'm telling you this. So what ends up happening is they find out the aide's name is David Holmes, find him. He gives closed-door testimony. I'm sure he will also give public testimony at some point. I'm sure they've just got to get him on the schedule because it's already a pretty full schedule as it is, but what ends up happening? David Holmes, like I said, gives closed-door testimony. The opening statement has been released publicly. And there's a lot there, basically kind of corroborating a lot of what Taylor says, a lot of what Yovanovitch says, as far as kind of events surrounding certain things that were going on the ground. He basically corroborates that. But really, the bombshell from this, the whole point of this is he testifies, and mind you, this is all under oath, and he is putting his name to it, that through a series of events, and I'll try to kind of explain this as best as possible because it's there's like a whole lead up here that is rather interesting. Basically, Sondland was having a closed-door meeting with one of President Zelensky's aides, and David Holmes had been sent over by the U.S. Embassy to sit in on that meeting and take notes. So he gets there, he tries to get in, they tell him, no, you can't come in there, it's a closed-door meeting, they're not letting anybody in. So at this point, I guess it's not really up to you what you do. I mean, I guess he wasn't really just at liberty to leave, so he sits out there in the outer chamber waiting for this meeting to be over. It's him, it's a couple of Sondland's aides that came along with Sondland, and obviously they weren't allowed in the room either, so they're all sitting out there. They're waiting for this meeting to be over. The meeting's over. Sondland comes out and decides that he wants to go to lunch, and everybody ends up going to lunch together. So they're all at lunch. They're in an open-air restaurant, like it's basically outside. There's several people that can hear this. So, yeah, it's not a private place, mind you. So they're having lunch, and for one reason or another, I couldn't begin to imagine why Sondland would do this other than to basically show that he could. He decides that he is going to call up President Trump directly on his cell phone. So he dials the number, you go through all the switchboards, you go through all I guess you don't just call up the president directly, I guess you call a switchboard and they patch you through and all that stuff. So eventually, Sondland is put on the phone with Trump. Now, to nobody's surprise, Trump is apparently a very loud phone talker, and everybody knows the loud phone talker. The person that cannot figure out the difference between an inside voice and an outside voice, and so they're basically screaming at you through the phone. So that's apparently the kind of person Trump is. Shocker. But I tell you that to tell you that there are points in this conversation, which again is happening in public, where lots of people can hear it and there's other people at the table. Sondland is holding the phone away from his ear at certain points because Trump is just talking too damn loud. And so Holmes overheard the conversation between Sondland and Trump. And I guess to back up and give you a little bit of context, this all apparently took place on July 26th of this year, which is a day after the July 25th phone call between Trump and Zelensky. That is the basis of this whole quid pro quo argument. So this is a day later. Sondland's on the phone with Trump. Trump specifically asks about, did you talk to him about the investigations? And this is the funny part. I'm sorry. It's funny. But basically, Sondland tells Trump that Zelensky loves your ass and he's ready to do whatever you ask. So, mind you, again, this is the day after the phone call. Trump is asking about the investigations. So, Holmes overhears this, logs it in his brain because, obviously that's the kind of thing you do. And so after the phone conversation, Holmes is talking to Sondland and he asks Sondland, okay, does Trump actually care about Ukraine, or what is going on here? And Sondland's answer is, no, Trump doesn't really actually give a shit about Ukraine. He just cares about the big stuff. To which Holmes is well, Ukraine is kind of big stuff. Ukraine is having a current military battle with Russia because Russia keeps trying to move into Ukraine, and that's why we're sending them aid in the first place. So it's kind of a big deal. And Sondland says, according to Holmes, that no, when Trump says big stuff, he means stuff that affects him personally. And so the question finally comes out. It's okay, so what's the deal here? Does he actually care about Ukraine? And Sondland allegedly says Trump doesn't give a shit about Ukraine. All he cares about is the Biden investigation. So, yeah, that happened. And the reason why I guess nobody had said anything before is Holmes at the time, obviously he thought it was a big deal, but it didn't really register how big of a deal this was until he started seeing the testimony come out from Taylor, from Yovanovitch, from various people who have testified. And he was oh shit, no, this phone call is something big. I need to go say something about it. So apparently he told Taylor. Taylor told the House Intelligence Committee. House Intelligence Committee got a hold of David Holmes and had him do testimony. So I tell you all that to tell you this, because, and this is why this is going to be a massive problem for Republicans and for everybody who is making the it's all hearsay argument, which is the first line of argument that came out about the testimony from this week, is that it's all hearsay. It's this person told me this, or this person said this to that person, and then they told me, and none of it is firsthand testimony, so who cares? David Holmes' testimony is first-person testimony. He is testifying to things that he personally witnessed, to things he personally heard, to conversations that he personally had with Sondland, and just the other things that he brings up. It's the opening statements, it's kind of long, but it is worth reading because there's a lot there and he does touch on a lot of stuff. But this, if and when David Holmes does testify publicly, which, like I said, from reading his opening statement, I don't think he would be opposed to it. I don't know if it's been put on the schedule yet, but that's going to be first-person testimony. So you can't really make the argument that it's inadmissible somehow, or that it is less than, because, yeah, like he's saying, no, I saw this happen. I heard this conversation with my own ears and with my own eyes. I saw this happen. So that is going to be something going forward, especially next week, because Sondland is supposed to be testifying next week. Which, problem here for Sondland. He's already testified behind closed doors once. He's already issued one amendment to that testimony saying basically, oh yeah, I remember these conversations that I had now. Here's where he's going to have to pivot again. Sondland has point blank said that he never had any conversation with anybody from the State Department or the White House concerning investigations into the Bidens, that he didn't even know that Hunter Biden sat on the Burisma board until this whole thing became public. Holmes' testimony completely destroys that, because he's saying, dude, I saw you have a conversation with Trump the day after the phone call where he asks about the investigations, and you talk to him about it and say that Zelensky is on board with the investigations. So, yeah, that's going to be real interesting to watch him square that in public testimony. This whole thing is just like such a disaster. Like, guys, don't ever ask for something to be done in public unless you know for a fact you're squeaky clean, okay? This is just turning into such a fucking shit show. Oh my lord. But on the topic of testifying, we did find out a couple of people will not be testifying. One of them being John Bolton, which, boo! I was looking forward to the Bolton testimony. Boo! And also, Rudy Giuliani nor Mick Mulvaney will be testifying at this point. Everybody knows who Rudy Giuliani is. Mick Mulvaney is the acting Secretary of State, along with being the active Secretary of a whole bunch of other stuff. And so, yeah, the White House has blocked either one of them from being, well, they've not blocked the subpoenas. The subpoenas have been issued, but the White House has said that they can disregard the subpoenas because reasons, yeah. Legally speaking, I don't know if they can, but they are. And so that kind of also ties into the whole it's all hearsay argument that Republicans are making about this, which is, well, you're not letting the people who have firsthand knowledge testify. Like, Trump is not letting these people testify. So what else would you like? Like, if you want to go yell at somebody about that, go yell at Trump about that. Anyway, that's it for Bill Taylor's testimony and the surprise appearance of David Holmes and his testimony that pretty much destroys half the arguments that Republicans are trying to make right now, as far as everything being either hearsay or the absolutely ridiculous argument that if any of this did happen, it was Rudy Giuliani or Sondland or Mick Mulvaney or whoever just acting independently, and that Trump didn't know anything about it. Nope. Apparently, this did all come from the top. Take that for what you will. So that was Wednesday. Maria Yovanovitch testified on Friday, which Yovanovitch is the former ambassador to Ukraine who was, from all accounts, forced out of her role due to a smear campaign by Rudy Giuliani and by various other people in Ukraine who were loyal to the former president of Ukraine. Yeah, so basically, her testimony, again, is, if you were familiar, because she has given closed-door testimony too, if you are familiar with her opening statements or anything that leaked out about her testimony, there was nothing new there in her testimony. Basically, what I got from hers is pretty much like the backstory to everything that happened before the July 25th call. Like, basically, the whole point of having her there is to establish the lead up to the phone call, like everything that happened, kind of how Rudy Giuliani kind of somehow managed to get his way into foreign policy, and how Gordon Sondland, who is ostensibly the ambassador to the UN, which is a vanity job if I've ever heard of one, because yeah, you're the ambassador to the UN, but we also have ambassadors to specific countries in the UN. So I'm not entirely sure what the ambassador to the UN is supposed to do anyway. But yeah, it certainly wouldn't be the first vanity title handed to somebody who gave a candidate a whole bunch of money. Yeah, it's funny how that works. But so that was her testimony. Whether it is really, I mean, it is relevant because it is kind of important to know the lead up to what happened on July 25th so that you can kind of understand what happened after July 25th. But a lot of people are making the argument, Republicans making the argument, and even during the questioning that basically, why are you here? Like, what do you know about the phone conversation? Do you know about anything that happened at that point? Which, of course, she was already fired by then, so she wouldn't be in a position to know. I think she was forced out in April. Yeah, it was April because it was the same day that Zelensky was being sworn in that Yovanovitch was recalled immediately from Ukraine to come back to the U.S. and not really given any kind of explanation as to why. So, yeah, she wouldn't be in a position to know what happened in July. She wasn't there anymore. So, yeah. But anyway, that was last week's testimony. There will be more testimony this coming week, and probably the week after that, and the week after that, for forever and ever and ever, 100yearsimpeachment.com. That is a Rick and Morty joke if you didn't get that. But, yeah, this is just, we're never going to be done with impeachment, guys. I don't think. It's just going to go on for forever. But one more thing that I want to talk about the impeachment proceedings so far, just because this annoys me a bit, and that's people saying that this is boring. Great. Fantastic. That's all I wanted from this, was for it to just be as boring and dry as fuck. This isn't a reality show. It's an impeachment proceeding. It's not supposed to be exciting. There's not supposed to be a bunch of jackasses being jackasses in front of TV cameras. I personally am A-okay with the way that this is being conducted, which to kind of segue into the next thing that happened on Friday, impeachment proceeding-wise, let me try to explain to you kind of how this is supposed to work. I know I went over this before, but let me go ahead and just kind of give you a refresher course. So, what happens is whoever is testifying is in the room. And for the first 90 minutes, actually backing up even before that, basically Adam Schiff has time to do opening statements. Devin Nunes, who is the ranking Republican member on the House Intelligence Committee, he has time to do an opening statement. And then after that, there is a 90-minute pool of time that Schiff and Nunes can divide between themselves. And if they so choose, they can delegate some of that time to the lawyers that have been hired either by the GOP or the Democrats. Obviously, Schiff can delegate some of his time to the Democrat lawyer. Nunes can delegate some of his time to the GOP lawyer. And that's it. In those 90 minutes, those are the only people who can talk. Either Schiff, Nunes, or if they wish to defer to their hired counsel and let hired counsel ask questions to the witness. That's it. That's it. And it has done wonders to cut down on the shenanigans and the bullshit and the grandstanding. I'm A-okay with this. I am happy with boring impeachment proceedings, especially since if you've ever subjected yourself to watching a congressional hearing on anything related to the internet, where they do not abide by these rules and everybody just gets to ask whatever dumbass questions come to their mind, and some of them may not even particularly pertain to anything that is supposed to be being discussed. Yeah, this is better. This is way better. In fact, if we have to have open proceedings at all, this way is good. I'm good with this. So, anyway, at least Stefanik. Yeah, sorry. What ends up happening on Friday, and this isn't entirely her fault, Devin Nunes decides during part of his time in the 90 minutes that he wants to try to delegate some of that time to Stefanik. Like I just explained, that's against the rules. These are the rules that were set up for these impeachment proceedings. Republicans don't like it, but whatever. These are the rules that are put in place. So, he tries to kick some of his time to Stefanik. Stefanik tries to question Yovanovitch at a point in time where she was not allowed to, and Schiff shut it down, which according to the rules, is exactly what he should have done. Because again, if you let one person do this, then everybody's going to do it, and then everything goes haywire. So essentially, Stefanik was trying to talk at a period of time in which the rules did not allow for her to talk. I tell you that because after the 90 minutes, I believe it was everybody in the room, everybody that was there on the House Intelligence Committee listening to the witness testimony, each got 5 minutes of their own to question the witness. So Stefanik did end up having time to question Yovanovitch. It's not like she was frozen out of this completely. But of course, she decides to, and Republicans decide to frame this as Adam Schiff shutting her out and not letting her talk and blah, 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 blah. And look at this shit that the Democrats are pulling. They're not letting Republicans speak, which, again, like I just explained in the rules, is completely not the truth at all. Devin Nunes has just as much time to question the witnesses as Adam Schiff does, and then everybody else who isn't Adam Schiff or Devin Nunes gets their 5 minutes. Everybody gets a chance to talk, but it ended up being this whole big thing where ultimately Stefanik turned it into a campaign fundraising email, which of freaking course, because that's what you do when you grandstand and you turn this into the whole big thing. And it actually has shades of the Elizabeth Warren, nevertheless she persisted sort of drama thing, where she took time during a different hearing, obviously, that wasn't allotted to her and was not given to her to speak, to attack Jeff Sessions. And then that's when you got the infamous Mitch McConnell quote about nevertheless she persisted. And the reaction to both of these situations, which are actually very similar in that it is somebody grandstanding. It is somebody being a jackass because you know the cameras are on you and you know the mics are on and you know everybody's watching. Yeah. So Stefanik got a lot of shit from the left for doing this. Like, people basically calling her trash, just calling her names. And there was one photoshopped picture that was going around that was the original unedited picture was kind of bad enough-ish. Basically, the unedited version of it is Stefanik doing kind of like the Michaela Maroney face, but then somebody edited into that picture to make it look like she was also flipping the bird, which that is a completely photoshopped picture. That's not real. If you see it, not real, but lots of people latched onto that as if it were real, which just shows how mind-melting everything is right now, because the original unedited picture had already gone viral before the edited picture. So it's like, you should have known that that was a fake picture. You saw the real one. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? But anyway, everybody on the left loses their shit, and it's an interesting comparison to the Elizabeth Warren situation, because obviously when Liz did it, she was yes, queen, slay, hero woman for interrupting and speaking out of turn, and basically, again, because you know the lights are on, you know the cameras are on, you know the mics are on, you know everybody's watching you, so you kind of just grandstand. And it's just, it's so, this is why I didn't want there to be open hearings anyway, because I knew somebody would be a jackass and that other people would latch onto it and it would just become this whole thing. And it finally happened. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure Stefanik will be fine and everybody will forget about this by next week, but I am sure she won't be the last person to try to get her 15 minutes during this impeachment proceeding by being a jackass. Yeah, which is what I didn't want to happen. But anyway, that sums up impeachment week for this past week. And the next week will be impeachment week, and the week after that, and the week after that, until, I don't know, November of next year, I guess. I don't know, guys. I have no clue when this is going to end. So, anyway, moving on. On Wednesday, during Taylor's testimony, Trump released the phone call transcript. No, not that phone call transcript, not the July 25th phone call transcript. The phone transcript from the call he made to Zelensky back in April after Zelensky won the election. Yeah. And basically, you probably didn't hear about this because everyone just was like, shut up, the impeachment's on. And also because it's not the phone transcript we were asking for. But basically, what it is your general pro forma, hey, congratulations for winning your election. That's really cool. Maybe I look forward to working with you. Like, maybe one day I can come over to your house. Maybe one day you can come over to my house and we can hang out and be friends. Blah, 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 blah. It's like your regular standard congratulations phone call. Here's what is kind of stupid about releasing this transcript, other than the blatant attempt to try to yank the phone transcript narrative over to something that isn't what anybody asked for. And so if you weren't familiar with this and you're wondering, what is this phone call? And you Google phone transcript and that one comes up, everyone's going to be like, okay, what's the big damn deal? Like, I see what you did there. I see what you did there, Trump. But even in this phone transcript, it had always been put out there that even in April, that during this conversation, Trump had asked Zelensky about corruption and about working to help eliminate corruption in Ukraine. Yeah, that did not come up in this phone conversation at all. In fact, Trump spent time talking about the Miss World competition. Did not mention corruption at all. I do not think the word corruption was mentioned once in that phone call. So that also blows another hole in the defense that Republicans have been trying to put forth, which is that Trump was always concerned about Ukrainian corruption, and that even in the first phone call, he talked to Zelensky about it. No, he didn't. And that's why this, and I've mentioned this before, and I'm sure I'll mention it again, this is why trying to defend Trump is so hard. Give it any amount of time, he will do something that shoots any defense that you had of him right in the foot. It's like this, releasing this phone transcript, it just proves that, yeah, this was the whole corruption conversation was not something that happened until July 25th. It was not mentioned in April. It was not mentioned in May. It was not mentioned in June. It wasn't mentioned till the end of July, when all of a sudden Joe Biden looks like he's going to be the Democratic frontrunner. And now, all of a sudden, you're concerned. Okay, guy. But that happened. Nobody really talked about it because it was stupid and boring. Anyway, the last thing I want to talk about, which is another thing that sadly, because of impeachment, didn't get a lot of news time, and that is that the DACA case finally went before the Supreme Court. We're not going to know the final decision until sometime next year. But at this point, looking at transcripts that have come out from the testimony and from the judge's reaction to the testimony given, it is looking like they are going to side with the Trump administration, that they do have the right to rescind DACA. Like I said, we're not going to have a final answer until next year because obviously, if you don't understand how Supreme Court cases work, basically you go, you testify, you make your cases for, you make your cases against, and then they go on recess basically and think about it. Like they get together, they think about it, they go over the relevant case law, go over relevant constitutional law, and then as a group, they come to a decision. So it's not something that you get back instantaneously. So what's going to happen after that? I don't know. But the thing that I kind of want to bring up as far as DACA is concerned, and as far as the Supreme Court case is concerned, if it is shown that, yes, the Trump administration was correct in overturning DACA because they could, it's philosophical good news and practical bad news. Philosophically, yes, there should be a legal precedent for a president to overturn an order from a previous administration if they so choose. On the practical level, it still leaves us with the question of what do you do with the Dreamers? And seeing as Congress seems to have no will to even touch immigration reform, you still have the practical problem of what to do. Like, what are these people supposed to do? Like, is this now going to be a situation where these people can be deported And for what it's worth, the Trump administration lawyers argued that they're not going to deport Dreamers, but then, like, okay, so what's their legal status going to be? Like, what? It's still going to be a huge mess, is what I'm saying. So while there is the philosophical argument, there is also the practical argument. And I think forgetting the practical argument and sake for the philosophical argument is, don't do that. Like, remember that this is still going to be a problem. And since Congress seems to have no will to actually do their fucking job and make a law for these people, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it sucks that it had to come through the executive branch, but no other branch is doing it. So, like, now what? Like, where does that leave these people? Like, it's something worth keeping in mind when you start celebrating the fact that, yes, DACA is getting overturned because it's not law. Like, no, it's not law. But let's also remember why it's not law, and let's remember why Obama did this the way he did it. And let's remember that the last president who tried to do immigration reform, that would be W, got roasted for it. And that's why that this doesn't happen in Congress. And so that it's indicative of a bigger problem that really needs to be addressed. But of course, because we're busy dealing with 50 million other more petty things, and nobody wants to be the person to bring up immigration reform, why Democrats aren't making a bigger deal about this, I have no clue. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen to these people, and it just doesn't seem like anybody else has any real desire to do anything for them. And that sucks. That's shitty. It's sad all the way around. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. So as always, if you did make it this far, thank you for listening. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, and on my Patreon page. Take care, and until next time.